We're presenting for the small screen, and coming up in the next 7 minutes, I'm going to talk about information. How much information is good? How do you edit it? How do you structure it into a beginning, middle, and end? And how to be careful not to fall in love with something that you're very close to. So as we get into this section, let's start thinking about how much information our audiences see on a daily basis. Now, when we talk about information and overflow, I'd like to double click on this element because it really is something that I bumped into some years ago. I mean, this is an idea that was a concern in the 70s already. I first heard about it in Alvin Toffler's book. In fact, I read the book after I had bumped into these thoughts by L. Rees and Jack Trout in 1981. So if you imagine that this was a concern in marketing messaging back in the 80s, how much more of a concern should it be for us right now to get our messaging right and to get it out there and get people to understand it well? Now, this is something that's evergreen to me because it's something that Al Rees and Jack Trout said back then about positioning. They said positioning is an organized system for finding a window into the mind. It is based on the concept that communication can only take place at the right time and under the right circumstances. And so for me, it's very important that one should be very strategic about the message you're trying to get across. You should get in there by being concise and clear long before you even go on camera or before you start to present. And whenever I think about this stuff, it always reminds me of just how powerful structure can be in order to give you a direction and a way to break down your information so that you can come back to that thought of being concise and being clear. And it really finds itself for me in the work of Aristotle when he first talked about the three-act play in Greek theater, and he mentions those words. The first act, he says, is the complexity. It sets up a complex world. It gets the audience to understand what the complexity is that we deal with. And so that scene sets everything before we get into the body or the exploration. And he calls that the knot. Now, if you see a sort of a knot that unravels on the other side, what's interesting about it is you can look at that knot from different angles, and that really gives you an idea of how you would deal with the perspectives of a particular problem or a challenge that you're looking at discussing in your talk. And of course, by the end of it, you want to get to that third act, which is the unraveling or that satisfying aha moment or reveal that you're going to have at the end. And I think if you cue yourself with these three things as a structure, not just for an overall piece that you're working on, but also for every chapter or every segment of your talk. In fact, the same goes for every idea that you're trying to land. And so I often say, when you look at the beginning and the middle and end, and you realize that the beginning also has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the beginning of the beginning has a beginning and a middle and an end, and the beginning of the beginning has a beginning and a middle. Oh, you know where this goes. I always get tongue twisted around that. But I think that is something really, really important. And if I can hang one pin for you on this section, it is always to go back and edit, edit, edit. I think it's very important to keep a clear distance from the material so that you're not emotionally connected and you don't have any favorites of ideas that you're thinking not to throw out, because it will help you to be strategic, to be concise, and to be clear about it. I want to give you an example. When I was studying film at the film school, our editing lecturer had this idea. He said, you know, in film, of course, every second consists of 24 frames of film. And those 24 frames, it's roughly 1.5 feet of film. And if you're going to edit in a second, there are 24 places where you could go and perform this edit. It's a time-consuming effort. And the truth is, of those 24 frames that you can edit, only 3 will be great cuts. All of the other edits would be sort of so-so. This is what the lecturer said, and it's stuck with me for a long time. If you have all this information, there are some bits of information that are those gems that you really want to impart, and so I would urge you to really think about it very clearly before you start putting everything into a slide deck or everything onto a piece of paper as a list of stuff you want to share. First, edit, and it always comes back to edit, edit, edit. As I go into this section, I want to say, what is it that you can work on to keep the information overflow from happening? Keep things simple, keep it relevant, keep it clear. Always provide enough supporting information, but not too much. Provide balanced information, 2 sides to the story. And then, is it clear what it is that your audience needs to do next? You always have to bring it back to what it is that your audience is going to do with this information. If we're not doing this for our audience, for our wonderful people in the dark, then what are we doing it all for? So at the end of the day, see how you can bring it back to how people are needing to take action next. How can you make it land with impact?